Welcome to my CompTIA Security Plus course videos. This course is specifically designed to help you prepare for the latest version of the Security Plus Certification Exam. In this first video, we will cover Domain 1, laying the foundation for your success. I will guide you through the key objectives outlined by CompTIA, ensuring you understand what's required to pass the exam confidently. Be sure to like, subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos covering all 5 domains of the exam. Now let's dive into the Domain 1 and get you one step closer to becoming Security Plus certified. Welcome to the CompTIA Security Plus exam course. This course is prepared following the updated SY0-701 exam objective. The exam is structured into 5 domains, each contributing a specific percentage to your final score. As you can see, domain percentages vary with the most weight given to domain 4, that is security operation, but nonetheless, each domain is important from the exam perspective as well as your future practical career. So let's dive into the domain 1, that is general security concepts, and the objective 1.1 is compare various types of security controls. So first let's explore the categories of security controls. So there are 4 main categories, and these are technical, managerial, operational and physical. We will see the examples as well as definitions of these categories in a moment. But first, let me flash the types of security controls. So as you can see, there are 6 types of the security control, and these are preventive, deterrent, detective, corrective, compensating and directive. And again, we will see the definition, explanation as well as examples of each these types of security controls in a moment. So first let's define the categories of the security control. So the first category is technical, and that is the hardware or software mechanism used to manage access to resources and systems and provide protection for those resources and systems. So the keyword is here is the technical or technology. So these are implemented through technology, including the software and hardware. For example, an example of the hardware may be a router or a firewall, and for the software you can say that an antivirus on a server or on a PC as an example of a technical control. And the second category is the managerial. So managerial, as the name indicate, here the technical is derived from the technology. Managerial is the policies and procedures that comes from the top management. So the name of each category or the type of control also give you a hint about the purpose of this specific type and category of control. So the managerial control are basically policies, procedures, administrative controls defined by organization's security policy. And the security policy basically comes from the top management. Use planning and assessment methods to review the organization's ability to reduce and manage risks. So these are basically the procedures, the policies that are defined by the top management to reduce risk and mitigate risk, such as risk assessment policy, vulnerability assessment policy, etc. And then the third category is operational, and as the name indicates, it deals with the day-to-day operations. So help ensure that the day-to-day operation of an organization comply with their overall security, primarily implemented and executed by people. For example, your organization may have the daily backup procedure, and that backup procedure is done through operational control and executed by the people. And the fourth and the last category is the physical, and the name, as the name indicates, security mechanism focused on providing protection to facility and real world objects. So what is a facility? Facility is basically, you can say, maybe a building that houses the, let's suppose, data center. So this category is basically physical in nature, such as, let's suppose, you can protect the building by employing the guards, or you can also say perimeter fences. So so in short, the physical category of security control are those that can be seen or can be touched. You can say that these are tangible and can be touched, such as guards, fences, etc. We will see examples of each these in a moment. And these are basically the examples. So the technical example include encryption, smart cards, passwords, biometric. So encryption is a software security control. Smart card, you can say, a hardware type of technical security control. Password and biometrics again are security controls. Access control list again are implemented through firewalls and router, and again IDS, IPS. So as you can see, these all are technical control are implemented through technology. And then the second category is again managerial, and in this category we have the example of policies, procedures, vendor management, hiring practices, background checks, data classification, security training, risk assessment, and vulnerability assessment. So most of these are basically directions or policies and instructions, etc., to guide the organization towards a secure environment. Third category is operational. So these include backup and recovery procedures, awareness training, change management, configuration management, and media protection. So these are something that are done operationally by people in their day-to-day operations, such as change management may include changing the configuration of a firewall. So this will involve change management process. Again, the configuration management, you want to maintain a specific baseline of configuration of a firewall. So this comes in the configuration management. And the media protection may include the data at rest, or your, let's suppose, flash drives and your HDDs, their protection procedures. And the last category is the physical. So again, the examples are physical in nature, such as guards, man traps, fences, lights, motion detectors, guards, video cameras, alarms, and laptop locks. So the lock here are basically a physical lock, not locking the computer windows or laptop windows. This is basically physical in nature. And this is a summary slide of these categories of control. So again, the purpose of all this control is to secure and protect your valuable assets. And these are implemented in layer to give you a phenomena that is defense in depth, or this is also known as layered defense. And to remember, the physical category of control are basically they are tangible and touchable. Operational deals with people doing day-to-day stuff. Technical are implemented through technology, that is hardware and software. And managerial are basically policy based. And now various types of security control. Number one is deterrent. So what is deterrent? So deterrents are basically deployed to discourage violation of security policies. So it discourages a potential intruder from taking a potential intrusion or a attack, you can say. And again, the preventive are basically deployed to prevent or stop unwanted or unauthorized activity from occurring. Detective are deployed to discover or detect unwanted or unauthorized activity. And the number four is compensating, which provides options to either existing controls to aid in enforcement of security policies. And the fifth one is corrective, and these are measures taken to fix security vulnerabilities or mitigate damage after a security incident has occurred. So you can say that this one and this one, these are proactive, while the corrective is not proactive because it corrects a vulnerability or a damage that has already occurred, a vulnerability that has been discovered, and a damage that has occurred due to any incident. And the last one is directive, and these are again the proactive measure designed to guide behavior and enforce compliance with security policies and procedures. And as we saw in the managerial, again, these are from the top management, which includes different policies and procedure to guide the behavior of employees towards a secure environment inside the organization. So let's now explore few examples of these different types of security control. So in that trend, we can have security guards, lighting, security cameras. So as you will notice that these control basically falls in multiple types of security controls, such as the lighting can be deterrent as well as detective. Same is the case for security camera, they as deterrent as well as the detective, and this all depends upon the context. And we will see in a while that how to determine or how to identify that these control types in which category and in which type. From the example perspective, I will give you a few tips. So the second is preventive, and the example include again fences, which is a physical category, locks, as we study the physical, biometrics, man traps, alarms, systems, job rotation, data classification, penetration testing, access control methods, and firewall. So job rotation means that you do not want to carry out a specific job by a single employee all the time throughout the year and the whole time, because if that one employee is unavailable due to any reason, you may have the you may have damage to the organization in the form of unavailability of, let's suppose, services. So that why if you have job rotation, then you will have multiple employees trained on a specific task, and if one is not available, you will have the backup that will carry out the task. Detective, again, we have the security guards, as we can see that this is both in detective as well as deterrent. And again, the guard dogs, motion detectors, job rotation, mandatory vacation, audit trails, intrusion detection system. So IDS, intrusion detection system, is detective, while IPS, intrusion prevention system, will be in preventive. And violation reports and honey pots. And the compensative examples include the security policy, personal supervision, monitoring, and work task procedures, while the corrective include backup and restores, patching, antivirus and malware, forensic analysis, and disciplinary action. So backup and restore is a corrective because if an incident occur, let's suppose a disaster occur and your data is deleted or destroyed, you may restore it through backup. Similarly, if you discover a vulnerability, you can remove or correct the vulnerability through patching. Similarly, if your system has virus, you can remove it through antivirus, you can correct the system. Again, the forensic analysis is done after an incident, so it is also a corrective measure. And disciplinary action is taken after a violation is done by an employee, so again this is also a corrective. And directive, as we studied, include the policies and procedure from the management, including standards, guidelines, physical signage, verbal instruction, contracts, and agreements. So as we saw in the previous slide, a single security control can be identified as multiple types depending on the context of the situation. As we saw, the security guard can be both a deterrent as well as a detective. Similar is the case for the security camera. So security controls are designed, and why this overlapping? It is because security controls are designed to work together, and their functions often overlap, such as a security camera and security guards often work in conjunction. For example, a security camera system is both deterrent, deterring unwanted entry. Any potential intruder, if sees that the cameras are installed inside the facility, he or she would be deterred from entering the facility. And it is also detective because it records potential security incidents in real time or for later review. So how to identify a security control and put it in a specific category or type? It all depends upon the context. The classification of a control can depend on how it's implemented and the specific risk it is addressing. For example, an access control list or ACL can be primarily preventive. So ACL are basically configured to prevent unauthorized access or to block certain type of traffic. If it blocks unauthorized access, or detective if it mainly logs access for later investigation. You can also configure ACL to allow the access but only log the access time and other information, so you can later review for any unwanted access. So how to identify the overlapping security controls? So because in the exam you will be asked questions about specific type of control and where to put these control in which type or in which category. So the tip is that in the question, there will be specific words or phrases that will hint towards the specific control type. For example, when a control is deterrent, there will be phrases like a warning, a sign such as "Be aware, dog inside the facility." This type of sign, or a warning. Let's suppose high voltage warning at the perimeter fence. Visibility, perception. So if you see these words or phrases containing these words, then it should hint towards the deterrent type of security control. Similarly, for preventive, if there are access controls such as ACL inside a router or a firewall, authentication, because if you don't have username and password, you cannot log into a system. So when authentication is required, practically it prevents the access to a system without the credentials. Again, the firewall is basically used to prevent unwanted traffic, and again encryption is used to prevent unauthorized access to sensitive data. And when you see words or phrases containing words like monitoring, audit, logging, or logs, alerts, then these type of control are basically detective. For compensating, there will be alternative. Let's suppose there is a primary control and maybe there is an alternative control. So alternative control or secondary control is always compensating control. Backup is also a compensating, because you have a database that is being used by users in active production, but you also take backups of that database in case disaster occurs and the production database is destroyed. You can always have a compensating control such as backup to restore the data. And again, the redundancy means that you have multiple controls, such as let's suppose you have two web server. Okay, let's suppose you have web server 1 and web server 2. Although user need only one, but you have two in parallel, so that if one fails, you have a backup or a redundant server as a compensating control to keep your operations running. For corrective, you have backup. Again, as we saw that in case of a disaster, if you want to correct the damage or if you want to back up the data, if you want to restore the data, you need the corrective control, that is backup. And again, the restore, these are related. You if you have data deleted, you can correct the damage through the restore process. And the incident response is also a corrective, because incident response takes place after the incidents and tries to correct any damage to the organization through these mechanisms such as restore, backup. And the last one is directive. So again, in the if you have words or phrases containing words such as policy, procedure, guidelines, and standards, then these all hints toward the directive security control. Objective 1.2, that is information security concepts. The CIA triad. So the CIA triad is a fundamental concept in information security that stands for confidentiality, availability, and integrity. So C stands for confidentiality, A for availability, and I for integrity. Understanding the CIA triad is crucial because it forms the backbone of all information security concepts and strategies. So we will explain each one of these and their examples in the coming slides. Number one is confidentiality. So what is confidentiality and what is the purpose of confidentiality? So confidentiality ensures that sensitive data is only accessible to authorized people, systems, or processes. What does this mean? That unauthorized persons cannot see or unauthorized system cannot access the sensitive or protected data. Similarly, the purpose of confidentiality is prevention of unauthorized access. It stops unauthorized users from seeing, stealing, or altering private information. And how to ensure confidentiality or use of security measures. So techniques like encryption, access control, and passwords help maintain confidentiality. Let's explore a few examples of the confidentiality. So, or you can also say the methods through which confidentiality is ensured. So the first one is encryption. So protecting emails or files so only authorized recipients can read them. So encryption can be used for data at rest. For example, you can encrypt your hard drive through inside Windows through the BitLocker. You can also use encryption for data in transit, such as inside VPN when you communicate with some party over the internet or untrusted public media. Another example is access control. So restricting access to sensitive systems like financial databases to specific employees. What does this mean? That not all employees are required to see the sensitive financial database, and you can ensure this through access control. Data masking, so hiding parts of sensitive information such as displaying only the last four digits of a credit card number. As you must have seen that the credit card numbers is hide and asterisk is written instead of the actual number, and only the last four digits are visible. So this process is known as data masking. Two-factor authentication or 2FA, so requiring a password and a code sent to your phone to access an account. So this also ensures that unauthorized user or system cannot access your phone or sensitive data on your phone. Similarly, non-disclosure agreement, legal agreements to ensure individuals don't share confidential information. So this agreement basically legally binds individuals from sharing the sensitive information of organizations outside the organization with competitors or with other third parties. The second CIA triad pillar is the integrity. So the purpose of integrity is that integrity means keeping information correct and unaltered, preventing unauthorized changes. So it ensures correctness. Protection from tampering. It ensures data cannot be modified, deleted, or corrupted by unauthorized individuals or systems. Verification. So techniques like checksum or digital signatures verify data has not been altered during transmission or storage. So the digital signature is a very important concept, and we will explore and define as well as explain this in our coming video and slides. So these are the few examples of the integrity. Bank transactions ensuring that the amount transferred from one account matches the amount received without unauthorized changes. So it would be a disaster if someone sends you $10,000 and you receive the amount with one zero absent, that is $1,000. So this means that integrity was not ensured. So the insurance of this integrity is very, very important, and we can see is this bank transaction example. Similarly, software downloads using checksum, for example, like MD5 or SHA to confirm that a downloaded file has not been tampered with. You must have seen that when you download files from websites, there is also an MD5 or SHA-256 hash with this software. So how you can verify? You can take the hash of the software and then compare the hash with the hash that comes with the software. If both are equal, it means the software is unaltered and original. Medical records. So protecting patient data to ensure that no unauthorized edits or deletions occur in health records. Similarly, this is also very important. Email security. So digital signatures verify that an email has not been altered after it was sent. Database protection. Ensuring logs and entries in a company database remain unmodified by unauthorized users. So in short, the purpose of integrity is that the information during transition or during at rest must be unaltered or uncorrupted. And the third and the last pillar of the CIA triad is availability. So the purpose of availability is to ensure that systems, data, and resources are accessible to authorized user whenever needed. And it minimizes downtime. So it focuses on reducing disruptions caused by hardware failures, cyber attacks, and or maintenance. Backup and recovery. So strategies like backups, redundancy, and failover systems are used to keep services running and smoothly. So we'll explain the examples of these redundancy and failover in the next slide. So availability example. So the first one is web servers with a load balancer ensures websites stay online even during high traffic by distributing load across multiple servers. So what does this mean by load balancer and web servers? So you have, let's suppose here multiple servers. Let's suppose one, and let's for this example we have three web server, and this is the load balancer. So what does load balancer do? When it receives traffic, it basically distributes traffic equally among these servers so that not a single server is overloaded with the traffic, and so that it performs optimally and does not cause slowness or disruption. Similarly, the other function of the load balancer is that if one of these servers fails or shut downs due to any reason, the load balancer will stop sending traffic to this server, and instead the traffic will now be distributed among these two servers. And in modern systems, such as in cloud, if one server fails, there is automatically spin out of another server so that the capacity is as per the requirements of the user. So load balancer ensures that users does not receive any failure of a server or any load caused by high traffic is not experienced by the user. Rather than the traffic is equally distributed, and if required, new servers are created, such as in cloud, so that the user does not experience any delay or any performance degradation. Cloud storage backups allow users to access their files anytime, even if one storage server fails. So, suppose you have a data center offline, on-premises data center, and you have a backup storage inside the cloud. So, if your on-premises storage fails, you can also you can always connect to the cloud storage, and thus your services will be always available because the cloud can be accessible from anywhere, and cloud is basically highly available and accessible system as long as you have the connectivity such as the internet connectivity. Uninterrupted power supplies, that is UPS, keep system running during power outages to prevent downtime. So the UPS is used for shorter duration. For longer duration, if the outage is for longer time, then you need generators and sets. Okay. So redundant internet connection. Business uses multiple ISPs, so operations continue if one connection fails. So organization usually have multiple connections from different ISPs, so that if one ISP have some issues or if their connection fails, this internet connection is still available through the secondary ISP. So these all are mechanisms of availability. Similarly, disaster recovery sites. Secondary data centers ready to take over if primary center goes offline. So let's suppose you have a data center here. You can have a secondary data center either inside the cloud, or you can also have on a secondary data center inside another uh, city. Let's suppose you have this is one city. Let's suppose this is New York, and you can have a secondary data center in Los Angeles. So if this data center fails, users can still access the services from the secondary data center. Non-repudiation. So what is non-repudiation? The purpose of non-repudiation is that it ensures that a person or system cannot deny actions they perform, like sending a message or signing a document. What does this mean? That if someone sends you a message, he or she cannot later deny that she or he did not send the message. This is the purpose of not non-repudiation. Digital evidence. So it uses methods like digital signatures and logs to provide solid proof of those actions. So digital signature is the primary method used for non-repudiation. Accountability. This builds trust and accountability in communication or transaction by holding parties responsible for their actions because they cannot deny their action later on. So some examples of the non-repudiation: digital signature. So non-repudiation is ensured mainly through digital signature. So signing a contract electronically with a private key ensures the signer cannot deny it because the private key can only be available or accessible with its owner. So if he or she signs a contract with his or her private key, he cannot or she cannot later deny that it didn't take place because only he or she has the access to their private key. Blockchain transaction. Cryptocurrency transfers are recorded immutably on the blockchain. Audit logs. So system logs user actions like accessing sensitive files as evidence. So any action that takes place inside the system, such as user logs in user deletes some data, user accesses some application. These all actions are recorded inside logs, and later on he or she cannot deny having taken those actions. Biometric access, so fingerprint scans for system access prove individual responsibility. Remember, the credentials such as username and password can be shared, but it is impractical or impossible to share your finger with someone else. So that's why the biometric access ensures individual responsibility for accessing a system. Payment confirmations, so receipts and transaction IDs verify completed purchases. Triple A, that is authentication, authorization, and accounting. So as with the case with CIA triad, triple A, authentication, authorization, and accounting are also very important concepts in information security. What is authentication? So authentication is the process of verifying the identity of a user, device, or system to ensure that only authorized entities gain access to resources. Example, it typically involves validating credentials such as passwords, biometric, such as fingerprints, or security tokens. Authentication takes place through these mechanisms such as password, biometric, such as fingerprint, and security tokens. So these are different types of authenticating factors that we will study in a moment. The second triple A pillar is authorization. So authorization is the process of determining and granting a user's permission to access specific resources, perform certain actions, or use particular services based on their verified identity. So authorization usually takes place after authentication. So it is logical that first you have to log in into a system using the authenticating credential, and then you can access the resources. Such as if you log in into your Gmail account, then you can access the Google Drive or your email drive or your inbox. And the third pillar is accounting. So accounting or auditing refers to tracking or recording a user's activities such as access to resources, perform actions, and system usage. Example include login and audit logs, command execution logs. So accounting basically ensures accountability. So how to authenticate people, or how people are authenticated? So these are, you can say that, different authentication factors, and these are very important. And the first one is something you know. So use knowledge-based authentication like password or pins. Example, entering a password to log in. So this one is known as something you know. Similarly, a security question, that what is your first school name, is also the factor that is known as something you know, because it is based on knowledge. The second one is something you have. It means something physical you possess. Physically you possess involves possession-based authentication like a smart card, security token, or mobile device. So when you log in into a Gmail or Yahoo and you receive authentication code on your mobile device, that is something you have. If you have the smartphone, you can log in. If your smartphone is not available with you or is stolen, then you cannot log in. Similarly, security tokens or smart cards have the same functionality. If you have ATM card, then you can withdraw the cash along with the PIN. If you don't have, if you only know the PIN and don't have the ATM card, again you cannot access the cash. So this factor is known as something you have. The third one is something you are. Employs biometric authentication such as fingerprints, retina scans, or facial recognition. Example, locking a phone with a fingerprint. So this is known as something you are, and this is primarily based on biometric. And the last one is somewhere you are. So relies on location-based authentication using GPS or IP address. Example, restricting system access to specific regions. So, for example, there may be a service or a website that is prohibited for access inside certain countries. So that if you are in those countries, you cannot access the specific website, and this is because this authentication also requires that you must be somewhere to access the resources. So these are very important, and you must know and differentiate between these authentication factors. So how to authenticate devices and system? So authentication purpose ensures only authorized devices and system can access the network or resources, reducing risks of unauthorized access. Methods include certificates. So as the users or person have the biometric or password, the devices usually have the certificates to for their authentication. And the certificate is basically bonded with the device. Similarly, device have their fingerprints. Doesn't mean that physical fingerprints. Here, fingerprints mean that the device have certain characteristic or certain um, data that can be associated with them. And these whole identification factors are collectively known as fingerprint or biometrics. And unique identifiers like MAC address or TPM, Trusted Platform Module. Similarly, mutual authentication, both the client and server verify each other's identity for secure communication. So during SSL or TLS handshake, when you access a website through a web browser, mutual authentication takes place. So the your laptop or your PC and the web server such as google.com, they both authenticate each other. Device certificates, as we studied, digital certificate assigned to device verify their identity in secure environment. So device have basically certificates, and each device is identified through its certificate. And zero trust model, devices must continuously verify trustworthiness even if inside the network perimeter. So zero trust model basically implies that you should never trust and always verify that even if the device is your own device, it is inside the network, your private network, even then it must be verified or authenticated for absolute security. So another topic in Objective 1.2, that is authorization models. So authorization models define how access to resources is granted based on rules and policies. And we have different authorization models, and the first one is DAC, that is discretionary access control. So what is DAC? Owner control. What does this mean? That the owner has complete control over the resources, and the resource owner decides who can access their files or data. As the name indicates, it is at the discretion of the owner to whomever he or she wants to give access to the resources. Such as in this picture, if this admin has this resource, he or she can give access to whichever user or group he or she wants. So it is at the discretion of this admin. It is flexible. User can set permissions such as read, write, execute for others, offering high flexibility. Identity-based access is based on user identity or group membership. Risk of misuse, less strict than other models. So this model is less strict than other model. If you have something of very high security nature or very sensitive, you won't want to use this model. You will need to use other model which have more strict access control, such as MAC, mandatory access control. So less strict than other models, making it prone to accidental or malicious permission changes. So for example, if the admin gives permission to a specific group mistakenly, the whole group, all the users inside that group will have access to the resource. Common in operating systems. So frequently used in operating system like Windows and Linux. So you must have seen in Windows there are user groups such as administrators group or admin group. So whoever user is part of this group, let's suppose user 1, he will have all the permission of this group. So that's how it's work. So it is commonly used in OS. The next was in RBAC or role-based access control. So what is role-based access control? It depends on role assignment. So users are assigned roles based on their job responsibility. For example, manager or HR. So there are roles made. There is manager role, there is HR. When a new user, let's suppose John, comes into the office and he is in HR, he will be given the role of HR. Okay, so that's how it works. Permission based on role. Access is granted based on the user's role, not on their identity. So role permission will be given not as per the John, but as per his role because he belongs to the HR. As we can see in this picture, if this user 1 belongs or has the admin role, he or she will have permission to these resources. He has the permission to all resources 1, 2, 3, and 4. While user 2, if he has the role of a regular user, he will have access to fewer resources such as resource 1 and resource 3. So actually you can say that this role is basically the hat, and this hat has specific permission to resources. So it is the user that wear these hats, and based on this hat he or she gets access to the required or desired resources. Simplified management. So adding or removing access is easy. Just update the role, not each user. So let's suppose there are 10 users, 10 regular users in this regular user role. So instead of updating the permission of all the 10 users, what you need to do is only update the permission of this role. So all the permission of the users will be automatically updated. So it is easy to implement and the management is easy. Example, a salesperson role might allow access to customer data but non-financial records. So a salesperson will wear the hat of a salesperson, not that of the finance. So he or she will have access only to the customer data, not other such as financial record or HR data. Limits over permission. Limits over permission. Ensure user only have the access they need to do their job. Principle of least privilege. So how does this ensure principle of least privilege? So if this role regular user have access to only 2 resources, this user 2 will also get access to these 2 resources. Even if the user 2 wants to access the resource 2 or 4, he or she cannot because it is the role that defines the access permissions, and the user 2 cannot get access permissions. Next one is the MAC, that is mandatory access controls. So the mandatory access control has a centralized control. Access is strictly controlled by an authority like a system administrator, not by users. So as against to DAC, it is not at the discretion of the user, rather than it is controlled centrally based on classification. So resources and user are assigned security levels, or you can also say labels, such as top secret, confidential, secret, and access is granted based on these levels. So top secret will obviously have more access, confidential will have less. So the access is given based on the classification level. No user override. So user cannot change access permission or share resources without permission. So as we saw in DAC discretionary access control, the user can share resources with other users. But same is not the case in the MAC. User does not have the permission to give access to other users, or user cannot override. Highly secure. So this authorization model is highly secure, commonly used in environment like military. So remember, whenever there is in military, there is extreme requirement of secrecy. So this model MAC is used because it is highly restrictive. Or government system where strict security is essential. Example, a user with confidential clearance cannot access top secret files even if they try, because their clearance is only confidential, so they cannot get the top secret files. Next one is ABAC, that is attribute based access control. So access is based on attributes. Decisions are made using attributes of the user, resources, environments, or actions such as user role, file sensitivity, time, and so this is a dynamic and complex type of authorization model where access is defined based on many factors such as user attributes, environmental attributes, and data sets. Dynamic and flexible rules can include conditions like allow access if the user is in HR and accessing during business hours. So these are different attributes. The user is in HR, let's suppose this is user attribute, and he or she is accessing the system during business hours. So you can say that this is an environmental condition or an environmental attribute. So multiple attributes from these three sets are combined to give access to specific user. Context aware evaluates real-time context such as device location or network security level before granting access. So for example, let's suppose a device wants to access a system. So there may be a policy that the policy engine will first check whether antivirus is installed on this device or on this PC. So if antivirus is available and updated, the PC will be granted access, and if antivirus is outdated or not available, the access will not be given. So that's why it is called that it is dynamic in nature and it is context aware, or you can also say another term is used that it is risk based. So if antivirus is not available, it means risk is high, access will be denied, and if antivirus is available, firewall is on, risk is low, and access will be granted. Granular control enables precise access control by considering multiple factors simultaneously. So why it is granular? Because you are considering multiple attributes and you can control the access based on multiple criteria, such as there may be 4 to 5 or 10 attributes of the user, similar the case with environmental and the data set. So you can combine all these attributes and granularly control access to specific systems or users. Use in complex environments. So it is complex obviously because you are taking into consideration so many things and attributes to give the access. So ideal for organizations with diverse users, resources, policies requiring detailed control. So it is ideal for organization which is, let's suppose, multinational, where employees are spread all over the world. They are using different devices, and say you can then decide that if the user is in country X, give the permission, and if the user is in country Y, prohibit the permission. If the user is using PC with an updating antivirus, give the permission, and if the user is using PC without antivirus, don't grant the access. So you can combine multiple criteria to give or deny the access. So the next topic is gap analysis. So what is gap analysis? Definition is that gap analysis in information security is a process of comparing an organization's current security posture against a desired or required security standard or best practices. And the purpose is to identify weaknesses, vulnerabilities, and areas where security controls are lacking or ineffective. So let's suppose this is an organization, it has a current state of this, but the desired state is this one, and the desired state may be dictated by rules, regulations, security posture, etc. And there may be specific tasks that the organization has to take in order to reach this desired state. And according to these gaps or these actions, there will be an action plan in order to reach from the current state to the desired place. And how will you identify these gaps or these steps? These are done through audits. You can conduct an audit of your current state, and you will identify the gaps, the vulnerabilities, and the specific action that you need to take in order to reach this desired state. You can also conduct risk assessment. Again, to identify the gaps in order to reach a desired security posture or desired state. So what is the process? How to conduct a gap analysis process? So define the target state. Determine the desired security standard or framework to be used as a benchmark. Let's suppose, for example, you want your organization to be compliant with 27001 standard. So keeping this in mind, you can set your target that your organization should be compliant to this, and then assess the current state, evaluate the organization's current existing control policies and procedures as compared to this required standard. Identify gaps, compare the current state against the target state to pinpoint areas where improvements are needed. So since you have a target in sight, you can easily identify the gaps and areas where improvements are needed. Prioritize gaps, and then you will identify multiple gaps. Some will be of high priority, some will be of low priority, and then you will need to prioritize them so that the high priority gaps or high vulnerability gaps are mitigated first, and then the lower ones. So rank the identified gaps based on their severity and potential impact on the organization, and then develop a remediation plan. Create a plan to address the prioritized gaps and implement necessary security measures. So what are the benefits of the gap analysis? So it gives you an improved security posture. When you reach the desired state, you will have an improved security posture. It reduced risk of security breaches. So since you conducted the audit or the risk assessment, the breaches or vulnerabilities identified during the gap analysis will be mitigated, and you will have reduced risk of security breaches. Enhanced compliance with regulation. So when you, let's suppose, set your target for a specific standard or framework such as 27001, so you will have compliance with all the rules and regulation as per this standard, and your compliance will be updated, and you will be you will have compliance with the industry leading standard. Increase confidence in information security. Again, since you have done the gap analysis, you have mitigated the identified vulnerabilities, you will have increased confidence in your organization security posture. So the next topic is zero trust. So what is zero trust? It is an approach to security architecture in which no entity is trusted by default. So this is very important statement based on three principles. Number one is assume breach. So you should implicitly assume that the breach has taken place, and you should implement your security controls as such. Verify explicitly. What does this mean? That each access request by a user by system must be verified to confirm that it is a legitimate request. And least privilege access. What does this mean? That the user or system should be given minimum permission for their desired task. So also known as the never trust, always verify. So this is very important slogan. This is the you can say the motto of the zero trust, that you should never trust. Sorry for the spelling mistake. And you should always verify. So what does this actually mean? In traditional network, we assume that, let's suppose, this is our organizations, this is external world, let's suppose, and we assume that this is our trust network or trust perimeter. So everything inside this perimeter was trusted by default because they were inside our organization perimeter. So the trusted devices were not always authenticated or they were not always verified. But in zero trust architecture, you should never trust even if someone or something such as a user or device is inside your organization. You should always verify their identity, replacing the old concept of trust but verify. So in the old days, you trusted the uh, networks or the network devices or the user that were inside your trusted perimeters. So again, zero trust addresses the limitations of the legacy network perimeter based network model. So in the perimeter net based model, let's suppose this is the perimeter, this is your trust network, or this is your organization network, and this is outside world. So usually the organization would do that they will install a firewall at this perimeter to check any traffic coming from outside or going from inside to the outside world. But there was a problem with this architecture, and the problem was that if a system, let's suppose a device was compromised here, it was no longer checked because the check was only at the perimeter. So this device might then infect other devices as well, and maliciously this can communicate with the outside world. So the zero trust model, it removes this limitation of the traditional perimeter based network model. It assumes compromise breach in verifying every request. So every request is verified even from inside the trusted network. Nothing is trusted by default even inside the private trusted network. So this is a general architecture of the zero trust. So you have a control plane and you have a data plane, and inside the control plane you have this PDP. This is known as policy decision point. So PDP is policy decision point. So what does this mean? That the policy decision is takes place at the control plane. So again, this PDP includes the policy engine, also known as PE, and the policy administrator, also known as PA. We will explain each of these in a moment. And in the data plane, we have so the decision taken place here is then enforced here. So this is policy enforcement point, also known as PEP. So any security policy or any routing or any other decision that are taken by the PDP are enforced by the PEP. And once this policy is enforced on any access requirement or any access attempt, then the access is given to the enterprise resources. So we will explain these control plane, data plane, and the other parameter in coming slides. So what is access policy enforcement? As we saw in the data plane, so policy enforcement point. What is the policy enforcement point? It is the point where the access policy is enforced. So responsible for enabling, monitoring, and terminating connections between a subject. So what is subject? A user or a device and an enterprise resource. So this is, let's suppose, a point where a resource, let's suppose this is a resource, and an access request by an entity such as a subject, user or a device known as subject is terminated. This PEP decides whether the access should be given or denied, acts as the gateway that enforces access control policies. When an access request occurs, the PEP evaluates the request against predefined policies and applies the necessary controls. So these policies, as we saw, are usually taken in the PDP, the control plane, and then these are pushed to the PEP, that is policy enforcement point, and then policy enforcement points evaluate each request against these policy and grants or denies the access. So what is policy decision points? Remember, this is inside the control plane, and the PEP is inside the data plane, as we saw in the architecture. So it is PDP is where access decisions are made based on various factors such as user identity, device health, and risk assessment. Evaluates the context of an access request and decides whether it should be allowed, denied, or subjected to additional controls. So the PDP considers the 5 Ws, that is who is trying to access the resource, what resource is being accessed, when is it is being accessed, what is the location of the device or user, and why it requires the access. So in short, the PEP, that is policy enforcement point, it enforces policy at the connection level, while the PDP makes access decisions based on contextual information. So another two elements of the zero trust architecture were the control plane and the data planes. So the control plane, it has the adaptive identity. Its function is threat scope reduction. So we will study each of these in a moment in detail. It is policy driven access control. It has these two parameters, the policy administrator and policy engine. So it drives the policy based decision logic for zero trust. So where the policy based decisions are made. Data plane, so it is implicit trust zone. So it is not explicit trust zone, because each request is always verified. It has subjects and system. Subject is the and system are the resources that are being accessed, and it has the policy enforcement point where the policy is enforced. It enforces the decision defined in the control plane. So what is the control plane inside the zero trust architecture? Adaptive identity. So it changes the way that the system asks a user to authenticate based on the context of the request. For example, location, device, app, and risk. What does this mean? That the identity is adaptive. If a location is changed, then the access may be forbidden. If a user or a device inside X city or X country, he or she may be given access. On the other hand, if it is in the Y country, he or she may be denied the access. So it is based on the context of the request, including the location, which type of device is the user using, whether it is Windows, Linux, Mac OS, whether it is smartphone, which application is he or she uses, which browser is he or she uses, and what is the risk factor. Risk factor may include that if the device firewall is on, antivirus is updated, etc. So threat scope reduction. So an end goal of zero trust network architecture, which is to decrease the risk to the organization. So the control plane purpose is to decrease the risk through these parameters, through the policy decision point. Policy driven access control. So control based upon a user's identity rather than simply their system's location. So control is given, or access is given based on the user identity, including the user location, user device, application he is using, the risk factor, and not simply on the system's location. And policy administrator, so what is policy? It is responsible for communicating the decisions made by the policy engine, and policy engine decides whether to grant access to a resource for a given object. So the policy administrator and policy engine, they both combinedly make the policy decision point. So what is the data plane inside the zero trust architecture? So the data planes contain implicit trust zone. So part of the traditional security approach in which firewalls and other security devices form a perimeter, systems belonging to the organization were placed inside this boundary. So the implicit trust zone is basically, as we previously saw, it is the trusted parameter of the organization, but it is no more a trusted zone, it is an implicit trust zone. Subject and system. So subject refers to the entity such as user, device, or application requesting access. Subject may include the user, device, or application, while system refers to the resource or service the subject is attempting to access. And these may include the database, it is a resource, of course, the cloud services and the servers. And then the important parameter or the important point inside the data plane is the PEP or policy enforcement point, where a user or system requests access to a resource. The PEP evaluates it against predefined policies and applies the necessary controls. For example, so what are the example of the PENAC? That is network access control solution. So what does this solution does that whenever a device wants to access a network resource, it is first verified or authenticated through the NAC solution. And again, this verification is based on multiple criteria, such as the, let's suppose if a Windows device wants to access a system or a network, it may be checked for the antivirus, it may be checked for the Windows version, it may be checked for the firewall of the Windows, whether it is on or off, and so on and so forth. Cloud CASB. So Cloud CASB is the Cloud Access Security Broker. So it is a solution that sits between the client's request and the cloud, and each request goes through this Cloud CASB and is verified, and only authorized applications are given access to the authorized clients or authorized user and devices. And similarly, API gateway also acts as the PEP or policy enforcement point. Our next topic is physical security. Physical security is the protection of physical assets, including hardware, data center, and personnel from unauthorized physical access. Importance of physical security is that strong physical security is crucial for information security, as it prevents unauthorized access to sensitive data as well as the infrastructure hosting the sensitive data. So few of the key components of the physical security are: number one is access control. So implementing measures to restrict access to authorized personnel only through biometric authentication. And biometric authentication include fingerprint, facial recognition, and iris scan, access cards, tokens, and security guards. So these all measures can be employed to prevent someone from entering or accessing the physical facility or your physical assets, such as hard drive, servers, database servers, etc. Perimeter security, so protecting the physical boundaries of the facility, such as fences, barriers, surveillance cameras, and alarm system. So these measures are employed to protect the outer perimeter of your facility. And environmental controls, such as maintaining optimal environmental condition for hardware and data, including climate control, fire suppression systems, and power backup solutions. So these environmental controls also comes in physical security, because they prevent the degradation of hardware as well as the data hosted inside the hardware. So now some of the measures that are taken for the physical security, and the first one is bollards. So bollards are sturdy vertical posts installed to block vehicle or unauthorized personnel from accessing restricted areas. So primarily bollards are employed for vehicular access. As you can see that it cannot prevent personnel from entering the facility, but so the primary purpose of installing the bollard outside a facility is to prevent the vehicle from entering or damaging the facility, either intentionally or by some disoriented drivers. So the purpose is that they prevent physical breaches such as ramming attacks through vehicles, which could lead to data theft or damage to critical infrastructure. An example of use: protecting server rooms, data centers, and outdoor IT equipment like backup generators or telecom cabinets. So you can install this outside your server rooms, your data centers, so that no one can ram inside your facility. Material: so typically made of steel or reinforced concrete for durability and impact resistance. So they are mainly made of steel, as in this picture, but they can also be made of concrete. And integration often used alongside access control system like gates or barriers for comprehensive perimeter security. So bollards alone are not enough. Um, After the bollards, you must have other access control systems such as gates and other access control system to allow control access inside your facility. Access control vestibule. So an access control vestibule refers to a mechanism or process that provides control entry to secure area or system, and has the brief explanation. So it actually looks like this. It has two doors. So anyone that enters the first door must close this one in order to open the second door. So this is a secure area. This, you can say, this is an air gap system, and it prevents another person from entering behind you, or you can say that it is effective against tailgating or piggybacking. So intermediate access point acts as a transitional space between an unsecured area or network and a secure one, like an airlock in physical security verification layer. Enforces multi-factor authentication, identity verification, or additional scrutiny before granting access to sensitive system or data. So this door is basically, it have access control system installed either through fingerprint or through access badges. So anyone not having the access control cannot, of course, enter or open this door. Mitigation of tailgating and piggybacking. So the important point to remember here is that it prevents tailgating or piggybacking, which are physical intrusion attacks. So prevents unauthorized user from accessing secure areas by ensuring each subject undergoes individual verification. Granular access control, so limits access based on specific roles, policies, or contextual information such as device trust or location. This one is not very relevant to this physical control, so forget about this last point. But the main point to remember here is that it prevents tailgating or piggybacking, which are basically physical intrusion attacks. Fences. So fences are barriers designed to prevent unauthorized physical access to a specific area, typically around facilities, data center, or restricted zone. So if you see the fence in this picture, of course, this would not prevent unauthorized physical access, but there are fences, reinforced fences that can do the same. But fences are mainly used as a deterrent security control. So anyone seeing the fences would be notified that this is a secure area and should not be crossed. And the purpose is that they serve as the first line of defense by creating a clear boundary between the secure and public areas. Deterrent, as I said, it acts as a deterrent. Visible fences discourage intrusions and signal that area is protected. Types. So fences can vary based on security needs, including chain links, barbed wire, or electric fences. This one is looks like made of wood or plastic. So it can be of barbed wire. You can also install barbed wire on a heighted fence to even prevent the intrusion. Integration, so often paired with additional security measures like surveillance cameras, motion sensors, and security personnel for enhanced protection. So you can also install other measures such as security camera and motion sensor. You can install motion sensor over here, so anyone crossing this fence will set up an alarm that the perimeter fence has been breached. Video surveillance. So cameras and video surveillance provide a way to monitor and record the property perimeter for intruders and potential attackers. The important point is that they are considered detective physical controls, but their presence may also be a deterrent. So they both act as a detective and as deterrent security control. And how would you know? As we studied in previous slide, based on the context. If you only want to detect the intrusion, let's suppose by the security guards, and then they can prevent the actual intrusion, or you may simply install dummy camera as well to deter any intrusion. So if you only intend to deter someone from entering your facility, you can also only install dummy cameras, and anyone seeing these cameras would be deterred from entering the facility. Access badges. So access badges are used for identification and authentication. Access badges verify the identity of individuals entering secured areas, ensuring only authorized personnel are admitted. So by hey, you mean that you have smart cards or smart badges that are integrated with the system and on the doors to prevent unauthorized access. Access restriction configurable to allow entry to specific zones based on roles and permission, enhancing security. Tracking and auditing. So the badge records badge usage. So anyone when entering a facility enters a facility using the badge, his access is recorded and providing logs for monitoring an incident investigation. So later on, if let's suppose there is some incident or theft inside the server room, you can then check the logs that who entered the server room and at which time, and then investigate the incident. Multi-factor integration. So badges can be integrated with pins or biometrics for enhanced security. Deterrence. So one example of this is that your ATM card, when you use your ATM card, you use both the pin as well as your ATM card. Deterrence. So they act as a visible reminder of security protocol, discouraging unauthorized access. So any facility that require badges for access would deter personnel from entering the facility because of lack of these badges. Lost or stolen badge management. So they can be easily deactivated to prevent misuse if a badge is lost or stolen. Since the badge is integrated with the system, if a badge is stolen or lost, it can be deactivated from the system so that no one can use it to access the facility. Security guards. So security guards are employed 24/7 but could just be present during business or non-business hours, and they fit into multiple security control types. So this is important. They can be detective to only detect intrusion. They are also deterrent. Anyone seeing the security guards would not dare to enter the facility and provide a deterrent. And they can also prevent someone from entering the facility. So security guard basically fits into these three categories. So they can provide, and again, depending upon the context, if you are given a question inside the exam, you should read the context and select the appropriate control type. They can provide rapid security response if an intrusion or incident occurs. Robot sentries are rapidly replacing human in certain scenarios. Lighting. So lighting acts as a deterrence. Well-lit areas discourage unauthorized access and criminal activities by increasing the risk of detection. Visibility. So enhance visibility for security personnel, CCTV cameras, and authorized users to monitor and detect suspicious activities effectively. Access control so illuminates entry points such as doors, gates, and parking areas to improve monitoring and control of access. Safety so reduces the accident and hazard for authorized personnel by improving navigation in dark areas. And strategic placement critical in high risk zones such as perimeters, pathways, and critical infrastructure areas to enhance overall security. Integration with technology works in conjunction with motion sensors, CCTVs, alarm system for automated threat detection and response. So types of sensor. Multiple sensor can be used to enhance your physical security, and this includes infrared. So infrared detects heat signatures in the form of infrared radiation emitted by people, animals, or objects. It can be integrated into security cameras and alarm system to improve detection capability. So the infrared integrated into security cameras can be used to detect people during night. Pressure sensor, so designed to detect change in pressure on a surface or in a specific area, such as a person walking on a floor or stepping on a mat, and then you can set alarm. used in access control system to ensure that only authorized individuals can enter. Microwave sensor so uses microwave technologies to detect movement within a specific area, often used with other types of sensor to reduce false alarms. And the last one is ultrasonic. So ultrasonic sensor emits high frequency sound waves and measures the time it takes for the sound waves to bounce back after hitting an object or surface, commonly used in parking assistance, robot navigation, and intrusion detection. So let's suppose this is a facility and you have installed an ultrasonic sensor over here. It emits the waves. So the waves will bounce back from this. Let's suppose there is a door over here from here and will come back, and this will measure a specific distance. Let's suppose 2 meters. But let's suppose if an intrusion enters the door and comes over here, so now the distance will be reduced, and so the alarm will be set. So how does the ultrasonic alarm or sensors work? So the next topic is deception technologies, including the honeypot and honeynet. So what is honeypot? So honeypot are basically decoy system designed to attract and trap attackers. So these are decoy servers or databases to attract and study the attackers. They mimic real vulnerabilities to lure cyber threats. To lure cyber threat or cyber attackers used to study attackers techniques and tools. So once inside these decoy systems, the attacker can be studied as to how they unleash their arsenal of cyber tools and how do they compromise the systems so as to better prepare for their attack against the real resources, provide early warnings for emerging threats, help organizations improve security defenses. So, what are honeynets? So, a network of interconnected honeypots. So, honeypot, you can say that it is a single network. Honeynet is a combination of honeypots, simulates an entire system environment for attackers, collects comprehensive data on cyber threats, delay and distract attackers from real assets, and used in advanced threat intelligence and research. So these are some of the benefits of the honey nets and honeypots, that it improves understanding of cyber attack patterns, it enhances proactive defense strategies, it reduces risk by identifying vulnerabilities, and it also exhausts the resources and times of the attackers by uh, keeping them busy in these decoy systems and preventing them from compromising the real systems. So the next in the disruption and deception technology is the honey file and honey tokens. So what is honey file? It is a decoy file designed to attract attackers, placed in strategic locations to monitor unauthorized access and triggers alerts when access are modified. And honey token, these are decoy data such as fake credential and API keys embedded in systems or documents to track misuse, and they generate alerts when used, indicating a breach. Objective 1.3, Importance of change management process and the impact to security. So what is a change management? Change management is a structured process to plan, evaluate, and implement changes in IT systems. It ensures minimal disruptions, proper documentation, and stakeholder approval. So these are the key points for the change management process, that it should introduce minimal disruption inside the business operations. The change should be properly documented and it should be approved from the stakeholder. So it is important because if you introduce new IT systems or bring changes into existing IT systems without a proper change management process, this may result in the disruption or unavailability of key business operations such as IT systems and may disrupt the business services. Similarly, configuration management is a related term and it is the process of maintaining and controlling the settings of IT system. What does this mean? That there should be a baseline configuration set of each IT system and it should be maintained. This baseline IT configuration ensures consistency, traceability, and compliance across all infrastructure. So let's suppose you have an OS image of a Windows which is hardened, which has all the security features enabled, firewall enabled, unnecessary services disabled, and you can say that this is your baseline OS, and then you can compare all your devices with this baseline OS to ensure that the configuration that is in this baseline is available in all the organizations. So what is change control? Change control basically is a subset of change management focused on evaluating, approving, and implementing the specific changes. It ensures that changes are assessed for risks and align with organizational policies. So what is the difference between the change management and the change control? So change management is basically a broader process covering planning, communication, and documentation of changes, while change control is the step within change management ensuring each change is reviewed and approved before implementation. So you can say that the change control is actually the action that is taken during each change, while this is the change control is basically the action that is taken during each change, while the change management process is basically a broader term like the overall policy that how to introduce changes. This is the change management life cycle. So the initial step is that the change required is submitted to the change advisory board or change management board, and the change advisory board or the change management board then approves the request for change, and if it requires some changes it is submitted back, it is sent back to the requesting party, and then they introduce the changes and it is sent back to the board. Once approved, the change is documented so that the documentation is updated. The fourth step is important, the testing, because if you implement the change without testing, you may introduce disruption in the IT system and services. So first it is tested in a controlled environment so that it does not introduce any breakage to the IT system or softwares. The fifth step is implementation. The change is implemented, and then the reporting. It is the overall process is reported and documented. Business processes impacting security changes. So the purpose of this is that a change management program should address important business process issues. If you want to introduce a change management program, it must address these processes, business processes. And what are these? The first one is the approval process. Ensure changes are reviewed and authorized to prevent unauthorized modification. So in change management program, there must be an approval process. All changes must be approved by a change advisory board. The second is the ownership. Clearly define responsibility for implementing and managing changes securely. So the changes should be done by some stakeholders and it should be implemented so that there is ownership if something happens, or if there are some changes required so that the ownership or accountability is in place. Third one is stakeholder. Involve relevant parties to address security, operational, and business concern. So the stakeholder must be incorporated so that security, operational, and business concerns are incorporated. What does this mean? It means that if you want to introduce some changes into the HR application, the HR personnel must be involved so that they introduce or they are in the loop with respect to the security, their operational requirements, and the business concerns. The fourth one is impact analysis. Assesses how changes affect security system and business operation. As we studied, the change must be first tested so that the effect on the system, security, and business operation is evaluated. The fifth one is test results. It validates the security and functionality of changes before deployment. So the required change is tested to ensure the validation of security and the functionality before final implementation inside the production system. Backout plan, this is important. It provides a strategy to reward changes if issues or risk arise. So even after testing, if you implement the change and there are some issues, you must have a backup plan or a rollback plan so that you can quickly shift to the previous stage and resume the operations without disruption or downtime of the services. Maintenance windows, so allocates a secure time frame to implement changes within minimal disruption. So it is important that the changes are implemented during maintenance window so that minimum disruption are introduced to the customers or to the business operations. And standard operating procedure, that is SOP, defines consistent, secure methods for executing changes. There must be an SOP or standard operating procedure to carry out the whole process. So these are some of the technical implications of the change management process. So there are several technical implications that should be considered as part of the change management process, and these are allows list and deny list. What does this mean? That changes may require updates to security policies or firewall rules. So let's suppose you are introducing a new system, let's suppose a new application. So the new application will incorporate new servers, new IP addresses. So these IP addresses must be included, let's suppose, in the allows list. So these changes, the security firewall or policies may require updation as you are introducing new IP list. So impact is that modification can affect system access or communication, potentially causing disruption. So you must make into the account the impact of introducing new system and new IP addresses with respect to the existing system, and the impact should be studied so that the change or the modification of allows or deny list does not impact existing applications or resources. Restricted activities, so specific activities may be limited to authorized personnel only. Impact can slow down change process and affect efficiency. What does this mean? That there may be some activities or some applications that are accessed or operated by specific individuals, and this can have an impact on the change management process, because if those individuals are unavailable or they are busy in some other activity, the overall process may slow down. So this must be taken into account. Downtime, so changes may require planned downtime to prevent conflicts and ensure stability. So as we studied, the changes should be carried out in maintenance window so that there is minimum disruption and downtime. Impact is that downtime must be scheduled carefully to minimize business disruption. As we studied, it should be done during maintenance window. Another small topic is documentation. So documentation is the process of documentation current state of and changes to the operating environment. So your operating environment should be documented, and any changes in the operating environment should be also documented. Record all aspects of the change process, including planning, approvals, and implementing steps. So, the all aspects of the change process, including planning, approvals, and implementation, should be documented through documentation, so that later on, if the personnel and the employees change, there is a clear documentation as to why was the change carried out and how it was carried out. Ensure traceability by documenting the reason, risk, and impact of each change. So the documentation clearly shows that why the change were taken, what were the risks, and what was the impact of each change on the existing system and business processes. Facilitates accountability, allowing teams to review and analyze past changes. So what does this mean? This means that each change, when carried out, there are stakeholder and there are accountability. Accountability means that who ordered or who approved the changes and who requested the changes, so that all these things are documented, and if something go wrong or if there were some mishaps, it may be traced back to the accountable personnel as well as to the systems and resources. So supports compliance by maintaining detailed logs for audits and regulatory requirements. So documentation also supports compliance because it maintains the logs which are required during audit and regulatory requirements. Helps in future planning by providing insight for similar changes. So when you document a change, you can, if you in the future you want to make another change, you can review the previous past changes and learn from the lessons by improving upon the future changes. Another small topic is the version control. So what is the version control? Version control is used to track changes to files, documents, and code over time. It helps manage updates and ensure the integrity of configuration, software, and system files. So version control is not limited to the software version control. It is for the configuration of, let's suppose, the network devices, the servers, the PCs, the software, as well as the system files. It facilitates collaboration, allowing multiple users to work on the same files without conflicts. It enables rollback to previous version in case of errors or security issues. So you have multiple versions, stable version, the alpha version, and the beta version. If there are some issues in the beta version, you can always roll back to the previous stable version. Critical for secure deployment by managing changes to sensitive files and maintaining audit trails. Objective 1.4, explain the importance of using appropriate cryptographic solutions. Public key infrastructure, that is PKI. So public key infrastructure, or PKI, is a system used to manage digital keys and certificates for secure communication. Its purpose is that it ensures that data transmitted over the internet is encrypted, secure, and trusted. So this is the basic purpose of the whole PKI, the security and privacy of sensitive information over the internet or any public media. So the components of the PKI are public key, shared key used for encryption, private key, secret key used for decryption, kept secure, and digital certificates that verify the identity of users and devices. So this is very a simplistic picture of PKI. We will see the details in a moment. So what is CA and chain of trust? So what is CA? CA is the certificate authority. It is a trusted organization that issues and manages digital certificates. So the CA basically verifies the identities of entities, for example, the user, the websites, before issuing the certificates to ensure secure communication. So for secure communication, Let's suppose you have a browser inside your laptop and there is a server. So before communication, this web server has a certificate, and this certificate is issued by the CA. So how is this certificate issued? The main job of the CA is that first it verifies the identity of this domain or this website, that it is actually true. If the website says that it is example.com, it verifies all the detail, that who owns this website, what is the organization, and all the other relevant details before issuing the certificates. And once the certificate is issued, then the client can trust the certificate because it is issued by a reputable CA. What is the chain of trust? So it is a sequence of trusted certificates that starts from a root CA and ends at the end entity certificate. So this is how the chain of trust looks like. So at the top you have the root CA, and then you have a single or multiple intermediate CAs. And this is the end certificate. Let's suppose the server certificate that is finally issued that we were talking about. So the final CA that issued the certificate, it is also known as the issuing CA. So after the root certificate, there may be another intermediate CA, another one, and then finally the final CA, which is known as the issuing CA, that actually issues the certificate. So the chain of trust ensures the validity of digital certificates by verifying each certificate's authenticity in the chain. So the whole trust goes to the root CA, which is the main organization behind the PKI, and this CA then signs or validates intermediary CAs, and the intermediary CAs or the final CA then signs the individual or entity certificate. So this is how the chain of trust works. If each link in the chain is trusted, the entire certificate is trusted. So each of these CAs, including the root CA, intermediary CA, must be trusted so that the whole chain is trusted. And if the whole chain is trusted, no CA is compromised. It means the final certificate is also trusted. So what is another term in the PKI and CA is the certificate revocation list, or CRL. What is certificate revocation list? It is a list of digital certificates that have been revoked before their expiration. And purpose, it allows system to check if a certificate is still valid or has been compromised. So this picture explains the certificate revocation list. So there is a list maintained by the CA that contains all the revoked certificates. So a certificate is revoked if it is expired and if it is compromised. So when the client wants to access a web server, the web server presents its certificates, and then the client checks the certificate validity from the CA through this certificate revocation list. If this certificate is available on this list, it means that the web server cannot be trusted because the certificate is compromised. If the certificate is not on the list, then the client makes connection with the server because the certificate is valid. So managed by CA, the certificate authority maintains and updates the CRL. So each time, let's suppose in the future, if this web server certificate is revoked or compromised, the list is updated and this certificate is included in the list. Revocation reason: so the certificates may be revoked due to compromise, expiration, or changes in user status usage. It helps ensure trust by preventing the use of invalid or compromised certificates. So what is online certificate status protocol? That is OCSP and certificate signing request. So OCSP, or online certificate status protocol, is a protocol used to check the status of digital certificates in real time. It provides information on whether a certificate is valid, revoked, or unknown. It is more efficient than checking certificate revocation list, and it reduces the need for large data download. So as you know, the certificate revocation list contains the list of all revoked certificates. So manually checking this list is causing delays, and it is tiresome. So for efficiency, we have the OCSP, that is Online Certificate Status Protocol, which is efficient and fast way of checking the status of certificate. And what is CSR? That is certificate signing request. So a message sent to a certificate authority to request a digital certificate. So each time a new web server or a new user or a new device wants a certificate, it is done through a CSR or certificate signing request. And this CSR, of course, contains all the data, required data about the web server or about the user or organization that is required by the CA to issue new certificate. Contains information about the entity, that is domain name, its public key, that is requesting the website, requesting the certificate. So the requesting entity must provide all these information for the CA to issue the certificate, must be generated before obtaining an SSL TLS certificate for securing communications. So this CSR request must be generated before any entity can get this SSL or TLS certificate. So now let's define and explore different certificate types. So we have multiple certificate types as shown in this slide, and this includes the user certificate. So this user certificate authenticates an individual user's identity for secure access. So certificate can be binded to a single individual user. Root certificate, the foundation of a trust hierarchy issued by certificate authority. So it is the main certificate, as we saw in the previous slide, that provides the chain of trust, and it is the root certificate that signs the other CA certificates, that is the intermediate CAs. Domain validation certificate, it confirms the ownership of a domain, providing basic encryption. So as we studied, for a web server or for a website to have confirmation or to have basic encryption, it must have the domain validation certificate. Extended validation certificate, it provides the highest level of trust by verifying the organization's identity. Wildcard certificate, it secures a domain and all its subdomains under a single certificate. So this, if let's suppose an organization has multiple domains, it can request the wildcard certificate so that one certificate is sufficient for all its subdomains and other entities. Code signing certificates ensure software code integrity and authenticity. Self-signed certificate, that is the certificate created by the entity itself, not issued by a trusted CA, suitable for testing. So it is suitable for testing inside a organization if they want to test their system with the certificates. Or the organization can also use self-signed certificates if their systems only work within organization and they do not need to communicate with the outside world. So all the entities or devices of organization can use the self-signed certificates. Machine and computer certificates, so these are used to identify and authenticate devices within a network. So this is very important. Solutions such as NAC, network access control, can give access to devices into a network based on the certificate type or the certificate available with the machine or the device. Email certificate, it secures email communication with encryption and digital signature. So the encryption secures the content of the email, while the digital signature basically ensures the integrity as well as the authenticity of email. Third-party certificate, these are issued by an external CA to validate trust for non-affiliated entities. And subject alternative name or SAN certificate secures multiple domain names and subdomains in a single certificate, such as with the wildcard certificate. Objective 1.4, and that is encryption, and we are in domain 1, that is general security concepts. So encryption, this is very important. So let's explore some concepts of the encryption. So the first one is the levels of encryption. And in the levels of encryption, number one is file encryption. So the file encryption basically protects individual files by encrypting their content, ensuring only authorized users with the correct decryption key can access them. Example is encrypting a single document such as a Word document with a password. So this encrypts or secures individual document or a file. Volume encryption, so the level increases from number 1 to number 2 and then to number 3. You can say the level or scope increases. Volume encryption encrypts a specific logical storage space or partition, securing all data within that volume while leaving other parts of the disk accessible. For example, encrypting the D drive in the Windows. So it does not encrypt the whole disk, it only encrypts logical storage or partition such as D drive. Disk encryption encrypts the entire storage device, including system and non-system files, making it unreadable without proper authentication like a password or key during boot. Example is full disk encryption with BitLocker. So the difference between volume and disk encryption is that in volume encryption, you only encrypt a single partition or a drive such as a D, while in disk encryption, also known as full disk encryption, you encrypt the complete HDD or the hard drive, including all the partitions such as, in this case, the C, D, and if there are other drives such as E, all are encrypted, including system files. So the second concept is the data protection at rest. And in this at rest, we have the drive encryption. So data at rest means that the data is stored inside storage, for example, hard drive. And drive encryption include the full disk encryption, which encrypts the entire content of a storage drive, including the operating system and user data, ensuring data is inaccessible without proper authentication during boot. Example is again BitLocker or Firewall. And the second concept is that the self-encrypting drive, that is SED. So what is SED? It is a hardware-based encryption method where the drive itself automatically encrypts and decrypts data using a built-in encryption module, providing seamless and fast encryption. Anything that's written to the drive is automatically stored in the encrypted form. So this is a specific type of drive which implement encryption inside the drive itself, and whichever data is written to the drive, it is automatically encrypted. One example is this Samsung T7 SED. So protection of data again at rest. So data may be at rest, it may be in transit, or it may be in use. So what are the mechanisms for protection of data at each location or at each moment? So the protection of data at rest include the cloud storage encryption. It encrypts data stored in the cloud that is at rest stored, ensuring unauthorized access is prevented. For example, AWS, that is Amazon Web Services S3 server-side encryption. So S3 is Amazon Cloud Storage. Second is transparent data encryption. It encrypts database files. So this is very important. If there is a question in the exam that asks about the database encryption, always remember that database encryption type is TDE or transparent data encryption. So database file automatically at the storage level, protecting data at rest while allowing authorized application to access it seamlessly. Example, Microsoft SQL Server TDE, transparent data encryption. And the second data location or second data protection is in during transit, that is data protection in transit. And this data protection in transit include SSL, that is secure sockets layer, so encrypts data transmitted between a user's device and a server, preventing unauthorized access or interception during transit. So whenever you access any website from your laptop, PC or mobile, such as let's suppose google.com, this SSL encryption takes place. Another example is encrypting email communication. So whenever you access, let's suppose your Gmail, your mail communication is encrypted using this SSL or secure sockets layer. Second is HTTPS, that is Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. It is a secure version of HTTP that uses SSL/TLS to encrypt web traffic. So HTTP is specifically for web traffic, ensuring secure communication between a browser and a website. For example, accessing a banking site via HTTPS colon slash slash. So whenever whichever domains come up after this, it means that the communication between the client or the browser and the web server is secured through HTTPS. So the third phase of the data is data protection in use. And what does use mean? That when data is actively used by an application or user, and during usage, the data is most of the time inside the memory or RAM. So protection of data in use or during processing refers to safeguarding data while it is being actively accessed, processed, or used in memory. This is critical as data is typically decrypted during this stage, making it vulnerable to attacks. So the data can even be exfiltrated, or it can be compromised during usage when it is decrypted for application usage or for accessing by a certain device. So how data is protected in use? There are multiple ways. First one is secure enclaves. What does this mean? It isolates sensitive computations in a hardware protected environment. For example, Intel SGX. So you can say that, let's suppose there are specific portions for hardware protected environment where sensitive data is isolated and secured during computation or during usage. The other is homomorphic encryption. So homomorphic encryption allows computation on encrypted data without decrypting it. So usually when you want to use data, it must be first decrypted, but homomorphic encryption allows data to be used without decrypting it, and the data is actively used in encrypted form. Access control so restrict who or what can possess the data to ensure only authorized entities access it. So another important topic is, from the exam perspective, is symmetric versus asymmetric algorithm or encryption. So symmetric encryption, it uses the same key that is also known as the shared secret for both encryption and decryption. What does this mean? This means that symmetric encryption uses only one key. It is fast and efficient. Since only one key is used for both encryption and decryption, it is fast and efficient. It is less scalable. What does this mean? That if there are numerous parties and they want to use the symmetric key encryption, so it is less scalable as compared to asymmetric encryption. It requires secure key sharing. So another challenge with symmetric key encryption is that since the key is same for both the parties, let's suppose we have A and B and they want to communicate via symmetric encryption. So since the key is same, the sharing of the key is a challenge. So the key must be securely shared. An example of secure key encryption is AES, Advanced Encryption Standard, and it is the most widely used symmetric encryption. The second is asymmetric encryption. So it uses a pair of keys, a public key and a private key. So this is the main difference, that the symmetric encryption uses one key while the asymmetric uses two keys. One is private key. As the name indicates, it is private and kept by the user with him or herself, and the other is public, that is shared with other parties that wants to communicate. Slower compared to symmetric key encryption. So remember these points, they are important, and you may encounter them inside question during the exam. So it is slower as compared to symmetric key encryption. It supports scalability and key distribution. So symmetric was less scalable, it is more scalable. And we were discussing the secure key exchange. So this challenge of secure key exchange is solved by the asymmetric encryption. It helps in distribution of this symmetric key. We will see in a moment that how it's done. Secure key exchange but being slower. So it is, you can say that, providing secure key exchange but being slower. So for encryption and decryption, it is slower, but it helps in provision of secure key exchange. Example of asymmetric encryption is RSA, which is most popular, that is Rivest, Shamir, and Edelman. So these were the three inventors that invented this algorithm. Asymmetric keys usage or asymmetric algorithm usage. Asymmetric algorithm is used for key sharing, as we studied previously that symmetric encryption, one challenge is the secure key exchange, and here comes the asymmetric, which is used for key sharing. So public keys are shared among communicating partners and private keys are kept secrets by each partner. So when you want to do encryption using public key or asymmetric key encryption, the public key of the partners are shared among each other while the private keys are kept secure. Similarly, the symmetric key sharing is also done through the asymmetric algorithm. We will see in a moment that how this key share or key exchange take place. So the asymmetric algorithm is also used for data encryption. So for encryption, use the recipient's public key, and for decryption, the recipients use his or her own private key. Again, we will see this in a moment that how does this takes place. And the third and the most important usage of the asymmetric encryption is digital signature. So digital signature, use your own private key to sign a message and use the sender's public key to validate the message. So what is digital signature, how this is done, we will also this see in detail in a moment. But the main purpose of the digital signature is that it provides, number one, integrity of message. It means that it makes sure or it validates that the message sent from party A to party B is not altered or corrupted during the transit. And the second usage of it is authenticity. What does this mean? That the message origin is always authenticated. When the B receives the message, he or she is sure that the message was sent by the party A. So this means that both the message integrity and the message origin authenticity is made sure by the digital signature, which is also the key usage of asymmetric encryption or asymmetric algorithm. So use cases of symmetric and asymmetric algorithm. So now the symmetric algorithm is used for data at rest encryption. So symmetric algorithm is basically used for encryption. Main purpose is for encryption at rest as well as encryption in transit. So at rest, it is used for bulk data encryption such as database and full disk encryption. Remember, we studied a while ago that the symmetric encryption is efficient and fast. So that's why it is used for bulk data encryption at rest. And it is also used for VPN traffic encryption. In other words, it is used for encryption on the data in transit or the data in move. So securing data transmitted through VPNs. So VPNs, you know that when data is transmitted over a public media such as internet between party A and party B, VPN is used to encrypt the data, which forms a virtual private tunnel between these two parties. And this encryption takes place using the symmetric encryption. For example, using AES for tunneling protocols like IPsec VPN. As we studied, the usage of asymmetric is secure key exchange, because when symmetric encryption takes place between two parties A and B, the symmetric key exchange is a challenge which is done through the asymmetric algorithm. So exchanging symmetric keys securely over an untrusted network such as internet. Example, RSA is used in TLS handshakes. Use the sender's public keys to validate the signature. Again, we will study how this verification of signature is done in a moment. And again, digital signature verifying the authenticity of message or document. So digital signature, as I said earlier, does two things. One is authenticity of the origin of the message or document, and the other is integrity. So both that the message is not altered, it is same as sent by the sender, and the origin or the sender is authenticated that it is the same sender, or it is the party A that we are expecting to receive message from. Signing an email using an RSA private key. So now this slide shows how the key exchange is done using the asymmetric algorithm. So this takes place using the Diffie-Hellman key exchange, DHE, Diffie-Hellman key exchange, and this key exchange basically involves complex mathematics. So such as you can see that here mathematics involved, and this makes sure that the let's suppose Alice and Bob both have the same secret key, and they can exchange this key over the public channel without revealing this key. And how this is done? This is done through Diffie-Hellman key exchange using this mathematics calculation. But it is not necessary from the exam perspective to understand how this mathematics works. But just for understanding, I have here shown another picture for you people so that you understand the process. So let's suppose this is Alice and this is Bob, and they want to communicate or a public media using symmetric encryption, but they have the challenge of sharing the secret key, because the key will be same for both Alice and Bob. So what does this mean? The common paint means, such as we know here, that they both share something here in the mathematics. P is equal to 23, G is equal to 5. It is common, or it is exchange over the public media by Bob and exchange. So here by the common paint we means that Bob and Alice exchange these paints with each other, or they determine that we will use this yellow paint. Okay. Then they combine this public yellow paint or common paint with their secret colors. For example, here the Alice chooses this color, red color, and Bob chooses another color, you can say that sky blue color. And when they combine these both color, they the result is another color. And again, the resulting color, they again exchange it with each other. So Alice exchange her color with Bob, and Bob exchange the resultant color from this calculation with Alice. And again, they so this secret, remember the key is this secret. This is never changed. So they again combine their secrets with their respective color that they have received from their partner, and the resultant is a common secret which is same for the both. So this whole calculation, or this whole mathematical calculation, results in a common secret key without exposing it on the public channel. So remember, they chose something common that can be shared over public media, but again, they also chose something private or something secret that is not known to Alice, not known. Bob secret is not known to Alice. Alice secret is not known to Bob, and it is also not known to anyone else. And through mathematics, they receive something else, and again, they exchange this mathematic result, and once again they combine their secrets with the result of their respective partner, and resultantly they receive or get the common secret key. So this is how the key exchange takes place, and as we see, this whole process takes place using the asymmetric algorithm, or DHE Diffie-Hellman key exchange. So if you want to use the asymmetric algorithm for encryption, which is very rare, because as we saw, encryption is done through the symmetric key, and asymmetric algorithm is used for the key exchange. But let's suppose you want to do it, or there are some cases that asymmetric algorithm can be used. So let's suppose Franco and this is Maria, and they want to communicate using asymmetric algorithm and do encryption using this algorithm. So Franco sends a message to Maria requesting her public key. So remember, the public key can be shared with anyone. So Maria sends her public key to Franco. So this is Maria public key. And now Franco uses Maria's public key to encrypt the message and sends it to her. So Franco wants to send a message to Maria, so he encrypts it with Maria public key. So Maria receives this message from Franco. And remember, since it is encrypted with Maria's public key, she can always decrypt it with her private key, and thus she receives the message. And again, if Maria wants to send the message, she will need Franco public key. She will encrypt the message with Franco public key, and Franco will decrypt it with his own private key. So this is how the encryption through asymmetric algorithm takes place. Now there are types of ciphers that are known as block cipher and stream cipher, and as the name indicates, the block cipher encrypts data in blocks or chunks, while the stream cipher encrypts it one bit or one byte at times, such as in the form of stream. So let's explore it. So the block ciphers encrypts data in fixed size blocks such as 1 to 8 bits, processes plain text in chunks, implying the same encryption algorithm to each block. Example, AES, so Advanced Encryption Standard. So AES encrypts data in chunks or in blocks. If you are using AES 1 to 8, it means that the chunks is 1 to 8 bit, and if you are using AES 256, it means you are using chunks of 256. So this number also indicates the key size as well as the chunk size. So it is slower, the block cipher is slower but more secure for bulk data encryption. And stream cipher, so it encrypts data one bit or byte at a time continuously, typically faster and more efficient for real-time applications. So remember the keywords, stream cipher is efficient for real-time applications. So what are real-time applications? Such as audio or video conferencing, where everything takes place in real time. Example is RC4, Rivest Cipher 4, often used in application requiring high-speed encryption like audio and video streaming, as I already described. Another topic is TPM, that is Trusted Platform Module. So what is TPM? TPM is a dedicated microchip designed to secure hardware by storing cryptographic keys and other sensitive data. So as this picture indicates, it is a type of chip that is embedded by the manufacturer inside the hardware, such as this laptop. And this chip basically contains cryptographic keys for encryption usage, for encryption and other purposes such as digital signature, etc. Data protection, so it protects against unauthorized access and tampering by securely storing encryption keys, passwords, and digital certificates. So remember this, you cannot extract this key from this TPM. It is tamper proof. If you want to physically access this chip, it will self-destruct itself and the key will be destroyed. Secure boot ensures only trusted software runs on a system during startup by verifying the integrity of the boot process. Use cases: full disk encryption, for example, BitLocker, digital rights management, DRM, and secure authentication. So if you want to encrypt the hard drive inside this laptop, you can use this TPM encryption key to encrypt this hard drive. Compliance helps meet security standards like GDPR and enhance enterprise security posture. So another related concept is hardware security module, that is HSM. So HSM is a physical device used to generate, store, and manage cryptographic keys securely. So it is basically used for secure storage and generation of cryptographic keys. So purpose, as indicated, provides high level protection for sensitive data, ensuring secure encryption and decryption operations. So the sensitive data here is the encryption keys. HSM is basically used for storage of encryption or decryption keys. Use is common in industries like banking, government, and cloud services for key management, digital signature, and authentication. Security, again, such as in the case of TPM, it is also resistant to tampering and physical attacks. You cannot extract keys from the HSM, ensuring data integrity and confidentiality. Compliance, so often used to meet regulatory standards like FIPS 140-2 for cryptographic security. Another topic is key management system, that is KMS. So it is centralized management for keys, manages cryptographic keys for encryption, decryption, and authentication. Security, it ensures secure generation, storage, distribution, and life cycle management of keys. Compliance, it helps organizations meet regulatory compliance requirements such as PCI DSS and GDPR. So remember, the PCI DSS is the payment card industry data security standard. It is used for protection of credit card data, while GDPR is General Directive Privacy Regulation. It is an EU privacy regulation. Automation, it automates keys rotation, expiration, and auditing for improved security and efficiency. Integration often integrates with other security systems like encryption solutions and digital certificate authorities. Secure enclave, another short topic is secure enclave. So what is secure enclave? Isolated environment. It is a hardware based isolated execution environment within a processor. Remember, it is within a processor that protects sensitive data. So remember, we studied that the data protection must be ensured during at rest and transit and in use. So when data is in use, it is actively processed by the processor and it is inside the memory. So this protection of data during processing or during use can be ensured through this isolated environment or through this secure enclave. Encryption, data processed inside the enclave is encrypted and never exposed to the rest of the system. Integrity, it ensures data integrity and confidentiality even from privileged user or malware. Use cases, it is commonly used for secure computations, cryptocurrency wallets, and trusted execution environment. So remember, the secure enclave is also known as trusted execution environments. Example, Intel SGX, that is software guard extension, and Apple Secure Enclave are example of the secure enclave. So the last objective of domain 1 is objective 1.4, and that is obfuscation. And obfuscation includes the steganography, tokenization, and data masking. So let's dive into this topic. So the first one is steganography. What is steganography? It is the practice of concealing secret information within non-suspicious data such as images, audio, and text. So as this image indicate, it is the process of hiding data inside pictures, audio, or videos, and purpose used to hide existence of a message, making it undetectable to unauthorized user. So by seeing this picture, you cannot see these bits and bytes or hidden message without knowing the process or without analyzing it to extract the message. Techniques, common methods include hiding data in least significant bits of an image or audio file. Applications, so employed for code communication, digital watermarking, and protecting intellectual property. Difference from encryption. So how is steganography different from encryption? So unlike encryption, which makes data unreadable, steganography hides the presence of the data itself. So in encryption, you may see the data. For example, you may see something garbage like this, but you cannot make sense of it. While in the steganography, you cannot see even the garbage. The data is basically hidden inside the image. You cannot see it. So this is the main difference. Another topic of obfuscation is tokenization. So tokenization is the data replacement. It replaces sensitive data, for example, credit card numbers, with unique non-sensitive placeholders called token. So let's suppose your credit card number is 123456789. So it can be replaced with a token that is something like A, B, C, D. So this is how the tokenization works. And remember, this tokenization is then stored in a separate database, and this is basically used, and whenever this actual credit card number is required, then again this is extracted from this actual database, because the actual database also contain this token. Security, it reduces the risk of data breaches by ensuring sensitive data is never stored or transmitted. So this token is used for all purposes, and the actual data is not exposed to the risks. Irreversibility, so tokens cannot be reversed back to the original data without access to the secure tokenization system. So remember, as I said, that there is a system that, let's suppose this is a system that translate this token to the credit card number and vice versa. Without this, you cannot make sense from this ABCD, or you cannot simply translate it back to the credit card number. Compliance, so it helps meet compliance requirements, for example PCI DSS, by securing sensitive data, and usage common in payment processing, healthcare, and financial applications. Another topic in the obfuscation is the pseudonymization and anonymization. So pseudonymization, it replaces identifiable data with pseudonyms such as code, numbers, or aliases. It allows re-identification if additional information is available, and it retains some data utility for processing while enhancing privacy. Example, replacing a name with a user ID. So there is a minute difference between anonymization and pseudonymization, and we will see in a while. So anonymization, it removes all personally identifiable information, that is PII, from data, making re-identification impossible. It means that it is irreversible. So pseudonymization is reversible. So remember this for the exam point of view, you can extract the actual user name from the user ID using the system, but in anonymization the process is irreversible. Once you remove all the data, all the private data, you cannot make sense of the remaining data, and you cannot trace it back to the original data. Ensure data cannot be linked back to the individuals under any circumstances. Example, removing names, addresses, and other identifiers from a data set. So if you removed names, address, and other identifier from a data set, and you only left, let's suppose city, there is, let's suppose, some data set city, and again another identification is, let's suppose football. I'm giving just a crude example. So you cannot make sense, let's suppose New York and football, that what does this mean. But if you uh, combine it with the name, address of a person, and other thing, then you can make sense of that this person lives in this city and he is a member of this football club, etc. And again, what is the difference between these two? So pseudonymization allows re-identification, so it is reversible with additional data, while anonymization makes re-identification impossible, or it is irreversible. This is very important from the exam perspective. Anonymization makes the data completely anonymous, make the person completely anonymous. It is irreversible, it cannot be linked back, while the pseudonymization can be linked back to the original with the data. Pseudonymization provides more utility for analysis, while anonymization prioritizes privacy or data, or data usability. So what does this mean? Since in pseudonymization you have more data, so it is useful for analysis and research. While if you require absolute privacy, then you use anonymization, and then you can still use the remaining data, but it is of less significant utility than the data extracted through the pseudonymization. Another concept in the data obfuscation is data masking. So it is the process of obscuring sensitive data by replacing it with fictitious or scrambled values while retaining its original format. So as we can see, this is how the data masking works. By here we means scrambled values. The static we mean by the scrambled value. So let's suppose this is credit card number. All the digits are scrambled except the last 4 digits. So this is the purpose of masking, or this is how masking is done. This is the masked value and this is the original value. You must have seen this inside websites or e-commerce website. When you input your credit card number, usually the last 4 digits are visible while the rest is masked. Similarly, when you input your password, it is masked with these static. So it protects sensitive information such as credit card numbers, personal identifier during testing or in non-production environments. Types: static data masking and dynamic data masking. So static is done once and dynamic is done in real time during live production of the or processing of the system. Usage: common in application development, testing, and training environments. What is the benefit of masking? It enhances data privacy, as we can see here, minimizes the risk of exposure, and maintains usability for non-sensitive purposes. So you can still use the data for non-sensitive purposes, but application can still use your credit card number. But if someone is shoulder surfing over you, if you are entering your credit card number or you are using e-commerce website and someone is looking over you, he or she cannot see the whole number, while still the credit card is being used by the e-commerce or any other application. What is the difference between hashing and encryption? Again, very important topic. So hashing converts data into fixed length string using a mathematical function. So here, if you can see, we have this plain text, the hash function, and this output. So remember, this output is always fixed. If you are using, let's suppose, hashing algorithm SHA-256, what does this mean? That this output will always be 256 bits. While the input can be of any length, it can be variable, it can be 2 bits, it can be 200 bits, it can be 2000 bits. Doesn't make any difference. The output will always be same of this, and the output will always be of the same length. So it is one-way process, cannot be reversed to reveal original data. So this, you cannot reverse this hash to the original text. So this is the hash value. You cannot input it again into the hash function to get this plain text. Used for data integrity checks and password storage. So password, when you enter password into any system, these passwords are basically stored in hashes. And it is also used for data integrity. How does this data integrity works? We will explore it in a while. Example of the hashing algorithm are SHA-256 and MD5. So MD5 is old and it is vulnerable to collision attacks, and SHA-256 is used mostly nowadays. And what is encryption? It transforms data into an unreadable format using a key, allowing reversal with the correct key. So here we can see that you have an encryption key. There is no key, remember, in hashing algorithm. There is only hashing function or hashing algorithm. So you combine the plain text with the key and you get the ciphertext or the encrypted text. And again, you use the, in case of symmetric, you use the same key for decryption, and again you get the same plain text. And in case of asymmetric, you encrypt it with one key, let's suppose public key, and you decrypt it with private key. So it is a two-way process as opposed to the hash, which is a one-way process. It is reversible. It is a two-way process. Original data can be retrieved, used for protecting data confidentiality during storage or transmission. So another main difference is that encryption is used for confidentiality and hashing is used for integrity. So these were the main pillars of CIA triad. So for confidentiality, we use encryption, and for integrity, we use hashing. An example of encryption algorithm as we study AES is symmetric encryption algorithm, while RSA is asymmetric encryption algorithm. So use of different or usages of different algorithms. Symmetric encryption it is used for securing file storage, as we studied multiple times. It is used for protection or encryption of data at rest. It is used for encrypting drive, for full disk, for partitions, encrypting databases, records. Remember the important word TDE, that is transparent data encryption. When you encrypt databases, it is known as TDE, transparent data encryption. It is very important from the exam perspective. Securing communication channel, that is VPN, Wi-Fi with WPA2. Asymmetric encryption is used for secure key exchange such as TLS handshake. Digital signature to ensure authenticity such as signing email. We will see this in a moment, that how digital signature works. Encrypting small amounts of data like password or keys. So asymmetric can also be used for encryption, but for small amount of data, because it is slow as compared to symmetric encryption. So what are the uses of hash function? So it is used for storing hashed passwords securely. Verifying data integrity, it is used for integrity checksum for file transfer, and digital signatures and certificates, both for example hashing documents before signing. So what are the requirements of a secure or reliable hash functions? The first one is that it must be deterministic. What does this mean? That the same input must always produce the same hash output. What does this mean? That if you have an input of 1, 2, 3 4, it should always produce a hash of, let's suppose, ZXY. So anytime you input this input, it will always result in the same output. So it is deterministic. Fast computation quickly generates a hash value for any given input. So it is fast and quick. It must be fast and quick. Collision resistant. This is important. Two different inputs should not produce the same hash output. So if 1, 2, 3, 4 produces ZXY, there should be no input that produce the same output. So if you even change only one digit, 1, 2, 3, 5, it will produce a completely different output. Okay, changing a single bit must produce a completely different output. No two inputs should produce the same output. This process is known as collision resistance. Pre-image resistance, it should be computationally infeasible to reverse a hash to its original output. So this reversing this hash to this original input should be computationally impossible. It means that it should be irreversible. You cannot reverse the hash to the original input. Avalanche effect, what does it mean? That a small change in input should result in a significantly different hash. So as I said, that even if you I am giving this for example. Actual hash function, as we saw, it is star256 is 256 bits. So even if you change a single bit, the output will be significantly changed. This thing is known as avalanche effect. Another important concept is salting. So what is salting? Salting means adding a random value that is salt to data before hashing to enhance security. And why it is done? Its purpose is that it protects against pre-computed attacks like rainbow tables. Uniqueness, each salt is unique for every input, ensuring unique hash outputs even for identical inputs. So let me explain this. What does we mean by this salting? So let's suppose John enters a password, let's suppose 123, and it is stored in the database as a, let's suppose, hash value ABC. So when an attacker, or let's suppose an attacker, what does the rainbow table mean, or how it is used? That it is a table containing all these hashes. It contains ABC for this password and all the popular password hashes. So whenever the attacker wants to launch an attack against password, he or she does not enter the actual password into the system. He compare the hash pre-computed hash value with the hashes stored inside the databases. So how to remove this hack? And this is done through sorting. How does the sorting work? So John enters the password 123, but this time a random number is added to this password, and this random number, let's suppose, maybe 94. So this result in a completely different hash. And another user, let's suppose there is another user, let's suppose Bob. Even if Bob enters the same password, his salt will be different. Salt will be, let's suppose, it will be 67, and it will result in a completely different hash. So this is how this salting works, that it secures the password, and even the same passwords are stored as different hash value inside the database. This means that each salt is unique for every input. So for this input, salt is 94. For another input, it is 67. For another, it will be something different. Salt is typically stored alongside the hashed value. Use case commonly used in password hashing for secure authentication system. So as we studied digital signatures multiple times, so now is the time to explore that how this digital signature works. So let me explain it from this diagram. So this is a user. Let's suppose it wants to send a message to another user. Let's suppose this is ls and this is Bob. So the main concern between them is basically message integrity. The message should remain same during transit, and authenticity. Authenticity means that Bob will be satisfied that message actually came from ls, and he will also be satisfied that message is original and not altered during the transit. So how does this work? So this is the original message or the document. So what does ls do? She passes this message through hashing algorithm and produces a hash value of this message, and this hash is then encrypted by ls with her private key. So she gets this digest, or you can say a value, an encrypted hash value. And then the original message, so this is the original message as well as the hash value, encrypted hash value. So she hashed the message and then encrypted it with her private key. Both these are sent to Bob. So what does Bob do? Bob has the plain text message. He again takes the hash of this plain text. Okay, so he gets a hash, and the encrypted hash value, he decrypts the hash value with the ls public key. So remember, we already studied that an encrypted message with a private key can only be decrypted with the relative public key. So he decrypts the encrypted hash with ls public key and receives this hash value that the ls actually sent, and then he compares the both hash value with each other, one that he got from hashing the message in plain text and the other that he decrypted that was sent by ls. If both are same, it means the message is not altered and the message integrity is in check, or the message is validated. And the other validation that the Bob gets, that the message actually came from ls. How does he know that? Because only the ls public key can decrypt this encrypted hash value. Remember, only ls can have her private key, and only her public key can decrypt the message that was encrypted using her private key. So I'm sure this makes sense, and this is how the digital signature works. So let me now go through the slide. So it is a cryptographic method that uses asymmetric encryption. So remember, ls use private key and Bob use public key to encrypt and decrypt the message. To verify the authenticity and integrity of digital data, how it works: created using the sender's private key. As we saw, the message was encrypted with the private key of ls. The hash was actually encrypted with the ls private key and verified with their public key, and the hash was then decrypted using ls public key. Use cases: authentication. As we saw that Bob was satisfied that the message was actually sent by ls. Non-repudiation. So the senders cannot deny sending the message because she has the access to private key. So ls later cannot deny that she sent the message because Bob was able to decrypt the message with her public key, and that means that message was encrypted using ls private key, which is only available with ls. And it also gives integrity, provide assurance that the data or the message has not been altered in transit. Another topic is key stretching. So key stretching is a technique to strengthen weak keys or password by applying a computationally intensive process multiple times. And the purpose is that it increases the time required to crack passwords using brute force or dictionary attacks. And the method, it uses algorithm like PBKDF2, bcrypt, or Argon2, and it iteratively hashes password with added salt, making it computationally expensive to process. And benefit is that it enhances password security without requiring users to create longer password. So what does you make sense of it, that if even if you use a simple key or a simple password, this process stretches or lengthens the strength of the password or the key through these techniques to make it more secure. So another topic is the blockchain. So what is a blockchain? Blockchain is basically a decentralized distributed ledger that records transactions across multiple nodes securely and transparently. And structure is data is stored in blocks and linked together in chronological order to form a chain. Immutability, so this is important. What does immutability mean? Once recorded data in a block cannot be altered without altering all subsequent blocks, which is impossible. Consensus mechanism ensure agreement among nodes such as proof of work or proof of stake. Use cases, it is used in cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, supply chain tracking, smart contracts, and secure data sharing. So what is then the open public ledger? What is the difference between blockchain and open public ledger? So blockchain, as we studied, it is a type of distributed ledger that organizes data into linked immutable blocks, and it uses cryptography and consensus mechanism to ensure security and transparency. It can be public, private, or consortium based. Example is Bitcoin blockchain. And what is open public ledger? It is a general term for any ledger that is publicly accessible and records transactions transparently. It may not necessarily use blockchain technology, but it is focused on transparency and accessibility without needing cryptography violation. Example is land ownership registers in some countries. So another topic is that what are some common cryptographic concepts, or what are some exam tips that you can get from these slides? So low power devices. So what does this mean? That some devices are low power, such as, let's suppose, smartphones. Nowadays smartphones are also high powered, but let's suppose other embedded systems that needs cryptography. So how to deal with them? So devices with limited battery or processing power need efficient encryption, such as ECC. So remember this. Elliptic curve cryptography is an efficient cryptography algorithm. This is why it is used by low powered devices, which provides strong security without draining resources. It means that it provides strong security but with less processing power. Low latency requirements. So some application requires low latency. For real-time applications like video calls, use fast encryption like stream fibers. As we studied already, the stream ciphers are faster and they are suitable for real-time applications like video calls or audio calls. ChaCha20 is one of the uh, stream ciphers are one of the algorithms that can be used for low latency requirement. Supporting integrity. So to check if data is unchained, use hashing algorithm, as we already studied in the previous slide, like SHA-256 or HMAC to verify data. Supporting authentication. To confirm identities, use digital signature, as we studied in the previous example. In case of Alice and Bob, digital signature can be used to confirm the identities, or HMAC for verifying messages or users. Supporting non-repudiations. To ensure someone cannot deny sending a message, again, use digital signatures combined with PKI to provide proof of origin. So these are some of the limitations of cryptography. One is speed. So cryptographic algorithms, especially asymmetric ones, can be slow and impact performance in high-speed or real-time applications. So remember, the encryption is a resource-intensive process, and some application may require real-time speed. So this is one of the limitation, and to overcome this limitation, you use specific encryption algorithm such as stream cipher. Weak keys, so poorly chosen or short keys are vulnerable to brute force attacks, undermining security longevity. So algorithm may become insecure as attackers find weaknesses, requiring frequent updates to cryptography systems such as MD5. The hash algorithm is now vulnerable. It should not be used anymore. Similarly, DES encryption algorithm, it is also vulnerable. So longevity means that how long an encryption algorithm is or should be used. Predictability, poor implementation or predictable random number generators can make cryptographic systems easier to attack. Reuse, reusing keys or initialization vectors compromises security by exposing patterns in encrypted data. And entropy, insufficient randomness. Low entropy in key generation weakens cryptographic strength, making it easier to crack. So entropy means that the keys and the random number should be random, and randomness should be enough so that the attackers cannot make sense of the encrypted data. So the more the randomness, the more is entropy, and the less is the randomness, the less is entropy. So that's all for this domain. I hope it has been informative for you people. So please like the video and subscribe. I will upload the video of domain 2 very soon. So see you in the next video. Thank you and bye.